You don't catch the first little cracks until it's already too late. Looking back now, I can see there were always small signs. My wife, Jenna, had always kept a bit of a wall up when it came to her job. She was careful, almost religiously so, about keeping her personal and work life apart. I understood that. Our careers demanded a lot from both of us. She was a corporate consultant, and I was running a growing finance startup. Life stayed busy, but it worked for us. Or at least, that's what I thought. The first real hint that something wasn't right came on what was otherwise just another Thursday. We had plans for a quiet dinner at home, but she was late, which wasn't unusual since she often had late meetings. When she finally came through the door, though, I noticed something off. Her smile seemed forced, and there was tension in her eyes. When I asked her about her day, she brushed it off, barely giving any details. Then came the first real slip. As we were setting the table, her phone buzzed on the counter, and I noticed her glance at it with a quick flash of panic? Worry? It was just for a split second, and then she grabbed the phone and tucked it into her pocket. Work? I asked, trying to sound casual, even though a strange knot had already started forming in my stomach. Yeah, she replied, but her voice was tight. Just a client, nothing important. I nodded, but something didn't sit right. Jenna wasn't usually secretive, at least I didn't think she was. In the weeks that followed, those tiny signs started adding up. She'd come home later and later, always with the same explanation: client dinners, work meetings, late calls. Her phone, once left lying around without a second thought, was now always on her. Sometimes she'd step out to take a call, speaking in a low tone so I couldn't make out what she was saying. I kept telling myself it was just work stress, that she was busy with a big project. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, as we were sitting together in the living room, I finally asked, "You've been pretty busy lately. Everything okay at work?" She looked up from her phone, her eyes widening a little, like she hadn't expected the question. "Yeah, it's just, you know how clients can be." I nodded, but her answer felt rehearsed. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. That night, as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, I wrestled with my thoughts. Was I overthinking it? Was my mind just playing tricks on me? Jenna had never given me a reason to doubt her, but something was different, and I couldn't figure out why. The breaking point came about a week later. She had been more distant than usual that day, barely speaking to me before heading out to another one of her meetings. Something in me snapped. I couldn't keep ignoring the feeling anymore. I had to know what was going on, even if it made me feel like a lousy husband. When she left around 6:30 p.m., dressed a bit more sharply than usual, I felt my suspicions grow. I waited a few minutes, grabbed my keys, and followed her at a distance. She didn't drive toward her usual meeting spots downtown. Instead, she took a winding route through quieter streets until we reached a residential area. My heart was racing as she pulled into the driveway of a small 2-story house. I parked a block away, far enough to stay out of sight, and watched her approach the front door, checking her phone. She knocked, and moments later, a man opened the door. He was tall, well-dressed, and greeted her with a kiss on the cheek and a warm smile. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a friend or a colleague. I sat there, numb, watching them disappear inside. I don't know how long I stayed, staring at that door, but I knew one thing: this wasn't just about work. For the next few days I was in a fog. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't think about anything else but Jenna and that man. Who was he? What was going on between them? I tried to act normal around her, but every time I looked at her, all I could picture was the two of them together. She moved around like nothing was wrong, which somehow made everything feel even worse. How could she act so normal, so completely unaffected, while I was coming apart at the seams? It wasn't until I checked our shared bank account that I saw just how far her deception really went. I had only logged in to check a transaction for work, but as I scrolled through, something caught my eye. There were several large withdrawals, thousands of dollars, and I didn't recognize any of them. My heart started pounding as I clicked through the details and saw the funds had been sent to an account I'd never even heard of. Jenna had been pulling money from our account. And this wasn't small change, she'd been taking tens of thousands. I just stared at the screen, stunned. This couldn't be happening. Jenna wouldn't do something like this, would she? I knew I needed answers, and fast. That night, after Jenna went to bed, I waited until she was asleep and grabbed her phone. I felt a surge of guilt, like I was crossing a line, but I was past caring at this point. I needed to know what was going on. Her phone was locked, but I knew her passcode. My fingers trembled as I opened her messages and started scrolling. Most of them were work-related or from friends, but then I saw it, a thread of messages from someone named Kyle. My heart sank as I read through them. This wasn't just an affair. They were planning something way bigger than sneaking around. I transferred the money today. We're close now. Just one more deal and we're out of here for good. He doesn't suspect a thing. I felt sick. This wasn't just a betrayal. Jenna and this man, Kyle, were plotting something, and it involved my money. My business. I carefully placed her phone back and tried to steady my breathing. My hands were shaking, my thoughts racing. I had trusted her, I had loved her, and she was planning to ruin me. The next morning, as she moved around the kitchen like everything was fine, I struggled to hold it together. She had no idea I knew that I understood what she was doing behind my back. And it wasn't just about cheating. She was planning something way more dangerous. I pretended nothing was wrong, though my mind was racing. I needed time to figure out my next move. Confronting her now could tip her off, and she'd cover her tracks, and I'd lose my chance to stop her and this Kyle character. Later that day, I told her I had a work meeting and headed out, but instead, I went to see a lawyer. He came recommended by one of my closest business partners. The moment I sat down in his office, I knew I was doing the right thing. After I explained the situation, he leaned forward with a concerned look. "Your case is complicated," he said, thinking it through. "If she's been taking funds without your knowledge and planning to siphon money from the business, we need to act quickly. But we'll need more solid evidence." "More evidence?" I repeated, feeling my frustration grow. "I have her messages and bank records." He held up a hand to calm me down. "To freeze the accounts, block her access, and file legal action, we need an airtight case. Without it, she could countersue or play the victim. Worse, she could even blame you." The thought of Jenna turning this around on me made my stomach churn. I didn't put anything past her now. "So, what do I do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "First, gather more data on these transactions. If she's been doing this for a while, there's bound to be a trail. We'll need to trace where the money is going. Also, start building evidence of her involvement in your business decisions. The more we can tie her to this scheme, the stronger the case." I nodded. It was a lot to take in, but I had no other choice. This wasn't just about infidelity. Jenna was aiming to dismantle everything I had worked for right under my nose. In the days that followed, I dug deeper. I tried not to let her see how I felt. I had to keep playing my part. We'd still have dinner together, still talk about little things like her day or weekend plans. But now, I was studying her, watching every word, every look, trying to figure out how long she'd been lying. At night, after she'd fallen asleep, I'd slip into her office and go through her files. I found more evidence of money being funneled from our accounts to fake companies, each transaction larger than the last. She was gearing up for something big, and I had to stop her before it was too late. I also started looking into Kyle. There weren't any easy leads, but I couldn't afford to stop now. But I eventually pieced together enough. His real name was Alex, an investor who had crossed paths with Jenna years before we'd even met. They had a history, and now they were back in each other's lives, only this time, their target was me. Then came the final piece of the puzzle. One evening, Jenna left her laptop open in the living room while she went to take a shower. I knew this was my chance. With my heart racing, I sat down and started navigating through her files. Most were related to work, but then I spotted a hidden folder, buried deep within another. It was titled simply Plan. I clicked on it, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Everything was there. The entire scheme detailing how she and Alex planned to siphon funds from my accounts and forge documents to make it look like I'd been the one involved in fraudulent business practices. There were drafts of fake emails, bogus contracts, even notes on how they'd pin everything on me once things went south. Once he's out of the picture, we'll have full control. I sat back, feeling physically sick. This wasn't just about the money. Jenna wasn't just planning to take everything I'd built. She wanted to frame me, to ruin my reputation, and leave me with nothing. With shaking hands, I quickly copied the files onto a flash drive and tucked it into my pocket, making sure not to leave any evidence of my search. I had what I needed. Now, I just had to decide what to do next. The next morning, I went straight to my lawyer. He was already waiting for me in his office, the urgency in my voice when I called the night before telling him all he needed to know. I found it, I said, placing the flash drive on his desk. Their entire plan. He took the drive, nodding. This changes everything. We can go to the authorities, freeze the accounts, and start legal proceedings right away. Do it, I said, more determined than ever. I want this over. The lawyer leaned back, studying me for a moment. You should be prepared for the fallout. When she realizes you've pulled the rug out from under her, she won't take it lightly. This could get ugly. I knew he was right. Jenna wasn't the kind of person to back down without a fight. She'd spent months, maybe years, laying the groundwork for this. And now, with it all crumbling, I had no idea what she'd do. That evening, I got home before Jenna and waited in the living room. By then, my lawyer had already filed the paperwork to freeze the accounts. Jenna would be cut off from our funds. It was only a matter of time before she noticed. When she finally walked in, frustration was all over her face. She had her phone in her hand, fingers flying across the screen. When she looked up and saw me, the pretense was gone. No fake smiles, no forced small talk. Is there something you want to tell me? She asked, her voice cold and sharp. I didn't respond right away. I just stood up, my heart pounding. You know exactly what's going on, Jenna. Her eyes narrowed. What did you do? I froze the accounts. I said, keeping my voice steady. I know everything. About you. About Alex. About your plan to steal my money and frame me. It's over. For a moment, Jenna just stood there, staring. I braced myself, expecting her to lash out, to deny it, to play the victim. But then she did something that terrified me more than any of that. She smiled. A slow, cold smile that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't the smile of someone caught off guard. It was the smile of someone who still held cards. You think it's over? She asked, stepping closer. You have no idea what you've started. A shiver ran through me. Her voice was calm, but there was something menacing underneath. I've stopped you from stealing any more of my money, I replied, forcing myself to stay calm. It's over, Jenna. The lawyer is involved. The police will be next. Her eyes flickered, a strange mix of anger and something else. You think freezing those accounts will stop me? Yes, I replied firmly. The funds are blocked. You can't take anything else. She shook her head, a look of amusement crossing her face. You're so naive. She took another step closer, lowering her voice. You really don't know how deep this goes, do you? I frowned. What are you talking about? Jenna's smirk grew wider, like she'd been waiting for this. You think it was just me and Alex after your money? That's cute. You're such a small part of this whole thing, and you don't even realize it. I felt my face drain of color. What are you saying? She tilted her head, studying me with a look that was equal parts pity and satisfaction. Let's just say Alex isn't the only one I've been working with. My mind raced. Who else was involved? But she didn't answer, and I could see in her eyes that whatever I'd uncovered was only the tip of something much bigger. She just smiled again, that cold, confident smile that made me feel like I'd miscalculated, like I was the one in over my head. Without another word, she turned and left the room, leaving me standing there, stunned by the implications of what she'd just said. I spent the next hour pacing through the house, my mind racing, trying to make sense of Jenna's words. If Alex wasn't the only one involved, then who else was? Could it be someone from my company? Another person in her life? The longer I thought about it, the more paranoid I became. Every person she'd introduced me to over the years, every casual interaction, weighed under a new suspicion. I dialed my lawyer and filled him in on Jenna's cryptic hint. She's bluffing, he assured me. It's a classic move. She knows she's trapped, so now she's trying to mess with your head, make you doubt yourself. But what if she's not bluffing? I asked, pacing the living room in frustration. What if there's someone else? If there is, we'll find out. He replied, calm as ever. No matter who else is involved, we have enough to take her down. Just stay the course. You're doing the right thing. I hung up, feeling only slightly more reassured. I wanted to believe Jenna was just bluffing, desperate and trying to throw me off balance. But the way she'd said it haunted me, making it hard to shake the feeling she might be telling the truth, and that terrified me. That night, sleep was impossible. Every small noise in the house made me jump, every shadow in the hallway seemed menacing. I didn't trust Jenna, and at that point, I wasn't sure I trusted anyone. Her words kept replaying in my head, Alex isn't the only one. The next morning, I woke up to find the house empty. Jenna was gone, without a trace of where she'd gone or what she was planning. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer, and I couldn't bring myself to leave a message. I wasn't even sure I wanted to hear what she might say. By midday, I decided to go to my office to check in with my team. Maybe if I could lose myself and work for a few hours, I could clear my mind. But as soon as I walked into the building, I knew something was wrong. People weren't just glancing my way like they usually did, they were staring, giving me looks that sent a wave of unease through me. I made my way to my office, but before I could even sit down, my assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Clark, could I talk to you for a moment?" she asked, looking unusually nervous. My anxiety kicked into overdrive. "What's going on?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. She shifted uncomfortably, eyes fixed on the floor before she met my gaze. There's been some talk. People are saying, well, there's a rumor that you're under investigation." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "Investigation? For what?" She took a breath. "They're saying it's financial misconduct. Something about money being funneled from the company to personal accounts. I don't know any details, but it's spreading fast." My heart pounded. This was it. This was the real plan Jenna had set into motion. She hadn't been bluffing. The wheels were already turning, and it was just a matter of time before everything went public. "Who's spreading these rumors?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head uncertainly. "I don't know for sure, but I heard Alex's name mentioned." "Of course. Alex." He was in the background now, pulling the strings, setting me up to take the fall. Jenna was gone, and Alex was finishing what they'd started. "Thank you," I said, getting up from my desk. "That'll be all for now." She nodded and left, but I barely registered her leaving. My mind was racing. I had to stop this. I had to get ahead of this before it spiraled out of control. I called my lawyer again, filling him in on the latest turn of events. He listened, and when I finished, there was a long pause. "This isn't good," he said finally. "If the rumors are already circulating, it means they're laying the groundwork to go public with the accusations. You need to brace yourself for what's coming." "What can we do?" I asked, a note of desperation creeping into my voice. "We'll get ahead of this. I'll reach out to the authorities and make sure they see all the evidence we've gathered. But if they're moving to frame you for financial misconduct, we need to act fast. We'll file a preemptive lawsuit, take them to court before they can take you down." I nodded, the idea of a public legal battle making my stomach churn, but I knew it was my only option. This was the only way to stop them. The next few days were a blur. My lawyer moved swiftly, filing the lawsuit and notifying the authorities about the fraud Jenna and Alex had orchestrated. But even as the legal process gained momentum, the rumors kept spreading. I could feel the walls closing in, and it seemed like only a matter of time before everything would implode. Then, just when I thought things couldn't possibly get worse, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Mr. Clark?" the voice on the other end began. Hale. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but there was an edge to it that set my nerves on high alert. Who is this? I demanded. You don't know me, but we have mutual connections. Just thought you should know, your wife isn't finished with you yet. A chill ran down my spine. What are you talking about? There was a pause, then the voice continued, calm and unnervingly certain. She's working with someone. Someone powerful. And they're coming for you. Before I could respond, the call went dead. But those words lingered in my mind like poison, filling me with a creeping dread that something far worse was on the horizon. I tried to brush it off, convince myself it was just another one of Jenna's mind games, another attempt to keep me on edge, to make me paranoid enough to slip up. But deep down, I knew better. The voice had spoken with such calm authority. It wasn't just Jenna's doing. She had someone else backing her, someone powerful enough to utterly ruin me. I barely slept that night. I spent the hours combing through every document, every piece of evidence my lawyer and I had collected, the transactions, the emails, the whole sordid web connecting Jenna and Alex. We had a solid case, but a gnawing doubt plagued me. Was it truly enough? Not if there was someone else, someone pulling the strings from the shadows. The next morning, I went to my lawyer's office, barely able to keep my thoughts from spiraling. When I arrived, he was waiting, his face drawn and tense. We need to talk, he said, gesturing for me to sit. There's been a development. My stomach twisted. What happened? He handed me a thick file filled with documents I'd never seen before. I did some digging after our last call. It turns out Alex isn't just some investor she met ages ago. He's been mixed up in several high-profile financial schemes. He paused. But that's not the worst of it. Flipping through the file, my eyes widened as I recognized the names on the reports, powerful names, people with connections beyond anything I could have imagined. These people are part of a network. My lawyer explained. Jenna's goal wasn't only to ruin you. She was using your company as a cover for something much bigger: money laundering, tax fraud, corporate espionage. And if this all collapses, they're ready to let you take the fall for everything. I stared at the documents, my heart pounding. This was beyond anything I'd imagined. Jenna and Alex weren't just after my money, they were involved in something dangerous, and now I was trapped in the middle of it. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We take this to the authorities, immediately, my lawyer said, his tone resolute. But be prepared. These people have power. They won't go down easily. I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. Then let's do it. Let's bring them down. The following days blurred together, a whirlwind of meetings with law enforcement, filing reports, and handing over all the evidence we'd uncovered. The authorities moved fast once they saw the extent of the operation. Jenna and Alex had been walking a tightrope for years, but now the net was closing in. It was only a matter of time before they were caught. But as the investigation progressed, the tension only grew. Jenna still hadn't shown her face, and neither had Alex. It was like they'd vanished, hiding out while the storm they'd created crashed around me. Then, just when I began to think I might have the upper hand, there was a knock at my door late one evening. I opened it and felt my heart freeze. Jenna stood there, her face pale and drawn, her eyes blazing with fury and desperation. Behind her, lurking in the shadows, was Alex, his expression cold and calculating. You think you've won? Jenna spat, stepping forward. You really think you can take everything from me? I backed away, my pulse racing. I didn't take anything from you. You did this to yourself. You have no idea what you've done. She hissed, her voice tight with anger. You really think the cops can protect you? That they can stop what's coming? Before I could answer, Alex stepped out of the shadows, his voice low and threatening. We're not going down alone, Hale. If we burn, you burn with us. My mind raced. They knew they were cornered, knew the walls were closing in, but they were willing to drag me down with them rather than face justice. What do you want? I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the fear creeping up my spine. Jenna's lips twisted into a bitter smile. We want a deal. You make sure we walk away clean, and we'll make sure you do too. I stared at her, barely able to believe what I was hearing. You think I can just make that happen? After everything you've done? Alex's eyes narrowed. You're not listening. This is bigger than you, bigger than us. If you don't help us, the people we work for will bury you. And they won't stop until you've lost everything. The weight of their words hit me hard. They weren't bluffing. If they were bold enough to confront me in person, they had nothing left to lose, and they were desperate enough to try and drag me down with them. I'm not making any deals with you, I said, my tone ice cold. You're both going down for what you did. For a split second, they stared at me in silence. Then Jenna's face twisted in pure rage. You'll regret this. She spun around, storming out with Alex close behind. But as they left, an odd sense of calm washed over me. I'd made my decision. I wouldn't be blackmailed, wouldn't let them win. The very next day, my lawyer called with news. The authorities had moved in. Jenna, Alex, and several others tangled up in their schemes were finally in custody. The media wasted no time jumping on the story, and my company's name was splashed across every headline. While the evidence we'd gathered helped clear me, the months of investigation left my reputation in shambles. But I got through it. Jenna and Alex didn't. Both of them ended up facing hefty prison sentences, their lives shattered by their own greed and ambition. Meanwhile, I was left with the pieces to pick up. It wasn't easy. My business took a hit, my personal life suffered, and the sting of betrayal left scars I wouldn't soon forget. But I survived. Slowly, I started to rebuild. Looking back now, I realize an important truth. No matter how hard someone tries to bring you down, you can always find a way to stand up again. It's been months since Jenna and Alex's arrests, but the memories of their deceit still hover close. Each day reminds me of just how near I came to losing everything, not just my business, but my trust, my sense of who I am. Trusting people is difficult now. It's hard to believe in honesty after discovering the worst from those closest to you. Still, I'm moving forward. Rebuilding slowly, carefully. Life doesn't end when someone betrays you. It reshapes you. It forces you to face truths you may not want to see. But it also makes you stronger, if you let it. And now, looking toward the future, there's one thing I know for sure. I won't be taken down that easily again. To all my listeners, thank you for tuning in and for all your incredible support. Your enthusiasm and feedback mean the world to me. Stay tuned for more stories to come. Warm regards.